Texas A&M isn't just recruiting well right now. The Aggies are moving like a program that knows exactly what it wants, and they're stacking future talent at a pace that should have the rest of the SEC paying attention. Because if this 2027 class holds together, Mike Elko may not just be building a good roster. He may be building the foundation of a monster. Welcome back into Gridiron Intel, where we break down recruiting battles, portal moves, and power shifts shaping college football. Today we're talking Texas A&M because the Aggies' recruiting momentum has officially become one of the biggest stories in the country. And this one is bigger than just a few commitments. This looks like strategy. As of early June 2026, the Texas A&M Aggies are sitting at or near the top of the 2027 recruiting conversation. Sports Illustrated's CFB recruiting coverage described A&M as the number one class in Rivals 2027 industry team rankings recruiting with 13 commitments and 5 five-star prospects. That's not normal momentum. That's not a nice little offseason buzz. That is a program stepping into the room and making everybody else feel uncomfortable. And the reason it matters is simple. Texas A&M has always had the resources. It has always had the facilities. It has always had the money. It's always had a massive fan base. It's always had access to one of the best recruiting states in America. But now, the Aggies look organized. They look aggressive. And most importantly, they look like they have a staff that can actually turn all of that potential into a real roster plan. The headline piece is the star power. On3's 2027 Texas A&M commitment list includes names like offensive tackle Mark Matthews, safety Kamari Dorsey, interior offensive lineman Kennedy Brown, and edge rusher Zyron Forstall among the Aggies' top-rated pledges. That tells you something important about the blueprint, that it's not just a class built around skill players. This is not just wide receivers and defensive backs for the highlight reels. A&M is loading up in the places that usually decide SEC football: offensive line, defensive front, secondary, and big-time athletes who can survive Saturdays in the trenches. That's how you build a team that can travel. That's how you build a team that can win ugly. That is how you build a team that can walk into Baton Rouge, Tuscaloosa, Austin, Athens, or Norman and not look physically overmatched. And this is where things get even more interesting. Texas A&M is not just winning battles close to home. The Aggies have also made noise in Florida. Good Bull Hunting reported that 5-star edge rusher Zyron Forstall committed to the Aggies, with Forstall ranked by On3 as the number 16 overall recruit, the number 2 edge rusher, and the number 2 player in Florida at the time of that report. That matters because Texas A&M should recruit Texas well. That's the baseline. But when A&M starts pulling elite bodies out of places like Florida, Georgia, and the broader Southeast, that's when the ceiling changes. That is when this stops looking like a regional push and starts looking like a national operation. And in the SEC, national recruiting is the entry fee. Alabama does it. Georgia does it. Texas does it. LSU does it. And if Texas A&M wants to be in that same weekly conversation, this is exactly the kind of class it has to build. Now, every Texas A&M fan knows the obvious question. Haven't we heard this before? Didn't Texas A&M already have a monster recruiting class before? Yes, and that's why this situation is fascinating. The difference now is that this class is being built under Mike Elko, and the tone around the program feels different. Less circus, more construction, less noise, more evaluation. Sports Illustrated's Texas A&M coverage has already framed the 2027 class as different from the famous 2022 class, noting that A&M is again dominating the recruiting rankings with several 5-stars and top 100 caliber recruits. The key question is not whether the Aggies can sign talent. They can. They've proven that. The question is whether this staff can identify fits, develop those players, keep the locker room stable, and turn recruiting wins into league wins. Because that's where the recruiting class becomes dangerous. Not on signing day, not in graphics, not in star rankings. They become dangerous when year one turns into year two. Year two turns into real depth. And suddenly your two deep looks like it's everybody else's starting lineup. That's the difference between collecting players and building a program. And right now, A&M looks like it's trying to build a real program. This is also not happening in isolation. The 2026 Aggies class was already a strong one. 24/7 Sports listed Texas A&M's 2026 class at number 10 nationally with 26 commits in its composite team rankings. That matters because one elite class can make headlines. Two strong classes back-to-back can start changing your depth chart. And three strong classes, that's when the whole program changes. That's when the competition level and practice changes. That is when freshmen don't have to be saviors. That is when injuries don't destroy your season. That is when the transfer portal becomes a supplement instead of a rescue plan. And for A&M, that is the real goal. Not just winning a ranking, building a roster that can withstand an SEC schedule. And here's why the rest of the SEC should care. Texas A&M does not need to become Alabama overnight. It does not need to become Georgia overnight. It doesn't even need to become Texas overnight. What A&M needs is a roster good enough to make every game against the Aggies uncomfortable. Because once Texas A&M becomes a consistent 9, 10, 11 win roster, the SEC changes. That means tougher Saturdays for the Longhorns, tougher Saturdays for LSU, tougher Saturdays for Oklahoma, tougher Saturdays for Alabama, tougher Saturdays for everyone trying to survive in middle and top of this league. And with the playoff expanded, you don't have to be perfect anymore. You have to be dangerous. You have to be deep. You have to be talented. You have to survive. And if A&M keeps recruiting like this, the Aggies are going to have the raw material to do exactly that. Now, let's be honest. Recruiting rankings in June do not win championships. Commitments can flip. Teenagers can change their minds. NIL situations can shift. Coaching staffs can change. And the transfer portal can rewrite a roster in one offseason. So no, Texas A&M fans should not be printing playoff shirts because of a 2027 recruiting ranking. But they should be excited because this is what momentum looks like before it becomes results. You see it in first visits, then in commitments, then in rankings, then in depth, then on Saturdays. And right now, the Aggies are clearly somewhere in that early climb. So here's the bottom line. Texas A&M's recruiting machine is getting out of control in the best possible way for Aggies fans. The class has star power. It has trench talent. It has national reach. It has momentum. And it has the kind of early foundation that can change the way people talk about Mike Elko's program. But the next step is only the one that matters. Can A&M turn recruiting wins into SEC wins? Because if they can, this isn't just another offseason hype story. This could be the start of the Aggies becoming a real problem. Subscribe to Gridiron Intel for daily college football recruiting, transfer portal, and NFL draft coverage, and drop a comment below. Is Texas A&M building a future SEC contender, or are we falling for the Aggies hype all over again?